Take your seat, settle in, and listen up. Gophers 101 is underway and in session. It's time to go to class and talk all things Gophers.
Yeah, here we go. Thor, thoughts? Let's just get right into it. I'm still reeling a little bit from Saturday. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to Manny and I discuss the game on Sunday's pod. I was in Iowa City, and I'll get this out of the way because one person decided to attack me for being negative about my Airbnb. So let me just reiterate, I love Kinnick. I have never had any issues in Iowa City. So there you go to that one person who chose to attack me and my dignity. Iowa's great. They have a great football team. They have a great city. Best fans in the country. Best tailgate in the country. Our team's bad. We're not any good. Okay, there we go. I think I got that out of the way. This is the unofficial pregame show for Purple Daily's Thursday. I'm Ross Brendel. That's Thor Nystrom. But in all honesty, Thor, I know you got thoughts as to what happened to the Gophers on Saturday, so just take it away, my man.
Yeah, I mean, right from the get, it was, many Minnesota sports fans, made the joke over the weekend of like, this weekend was the perfect encapsulation of Minnesota sports. You go from the Vikings, that game against the Chargers where they were dead on arrival, and then I don't follow basketball as much, but I guess Edwards he didn't play in a game or something.
He's out for a couple weeks now.
Okay. So then that happened, and then the Gophers, it was sort of the same thing as with the Vikings with the Chargers, where you knew pretty early into that first quarter, we know we're going to lose. How bad is it going to be? Ends up being 41-3. Iowa just deflates the ball in the second half, but that was tough. And Ross, we had talked last week about, this is going to have to go through the air for the Gophers, to have a shot here. And how will the young quarterback, Lindsey, respond to playing this defense against an NFL-style coordinator in Phil Parker, who loves to change the look on you after the snap and play these complex zone coverages? And Drake Lindsey, early on in that game, he looked like he had landed on the friggin' moon. He had no idea where he was. The reading the field thing, he was consistently confused. He was a beat behind, or he didn't see something, and throwing it to the defender. It was bad, and it got worse. That's sort of a burn the tape game, unfortunately, for the Gophers.
Yeah, and my big takeaway, Thor, and we talked about this heading into the game, 2 games on the road, 2 largely. I don't know if California was non-competitive. That one was just disappointing because it felt like if you were more competitive, you could have won the game by 2 scores. Instead, you lost by 2 scores. Non-competitive at Ohio State for the 1,000th time. Kind of throw that out. I don't really know what that means for 75% of the teams in the Big Ten. Iowa clearly better than I gave them credit for. I still don't think that explains away a 38-point loss and absolutely being blitzkrieged from the get-go. But largely, my big takeaway is at home, you've been fine. You've been able to, come back from your slow starts. On the road, your slow starts have absolutely crippled you and given you next to 0 chance to win a football game. You still have technically 2 road games left at Oregon. I think we all know what's more than likely to happen there. They play the games for a reason, so you never know. Wrigley's technically going to be a road game, but I do know there will be a lot of Gophers fans there. So that may be technically, it's a road game because you're traveling. It may be more of a neutral site game. My big takeaway, again, just not competitive on the road, and it leads me to this question to you, Thor. If the coaching staff had the answers, I'm sure they would do it. Coach Fleck talked about that in his weekly presser about the slow starts. If he knew the answer to slow starts, he would fix it. Paraphrasing there. What can the coaching staff do to get more out of their team in all games at the start, but specifically on the road, trying to avoid having to come from behind in these massive deficits, which, again, offense is much more pass happy than they ever have been. But that's still not a recipe for success to pass your way out of trailing 10-0, 14-0, 17-0. How can the Gophers be more prepared not just for home games, but for road games as well. What can they do to start faster?
For this team here, the only suggestion I would have made is just slight modifications to the game plan. But I don't know if you were winning that one in Iowa City. Either way, the bigger issue here for this year's team is you had sort of we'll call it a reload season, not rebuild, but kind of reload season. And hoping to make the bowl game. We talked about how the preseason win total was 6.5. Next year is the season if you can convince your dudes to come back. Where to your real question of how can we take this up a notch? That's work that's gonna have to be done off the field in the off season in the transfer portal. The Gophers have some real holes on this roster. We talked about in the preseason our concerns about the offensive line. Some of those have come to the fore here in recent weeks. But if you can get your key guys back, talking Lindsey, talking Coy Parrish, could you convince Darius to come back for a last year? You get those guys back and you augment it with a good portal class. I think that's how next year's team could be dangerous. Right, and competitive in some of these games and potentially beat some of these better opponents that they haven't beaten in a couple of years if everything breaks right for you this offseason. But yeah, this year's team, you just don't have the talent in the aggregate to win some of these road games, in some of these tougher environments.
Touched on this very briefly with Manny in the game review pod, but it's apparent, Thor, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or hop in and tell me if I'm wrong. It's apparent the Nebraska game was a couple things. You perhaps played your best game of the season. Nebraska more than likely played their worst, and you met on the same day. Okay, yeah. So that's a part of it. It's also entirely possible that most of what we saw was just an aberration because you have a month's worth of games prior where you're not stopping anybody on defense. You're starting off slow on offense. You play one great game against Nebraska, and more or less a pretty solid combination of what you saw leading up to Nebraska is exactly what you saw against Iowa on Saturday. And then it leads me to this, which you pretty much just said, Thor. It kind of is what it is. I think it's funny how much a week can change, and I don't love to flip-flop, but it kind of does feel like we're back to where we were 2 weeks ago, and the Gophers just are what they are. I still think they're going to win some games here at the end of the year, but they're definitely going to lose some games, and I think you got to get through the year, hopefully go to your bowl game. We'll see who plays, who doesn't. Hopefully you get a little bit better there. I've told you before, I always struggle for what that's worth for every team that can tell you, boy, the bowl practices really helped us last year. There's another team that can say, it didn't do squat for us. But it just kind of feels like this is what they are. I'm beyond expecting to be wowed by the defense because I just don't think it's going to happen very often. And at this point, yeah, because of opponents and who you play, there might be games where they run the ball better and pass protect better. But I don't really think that's going to happen when you play a team like Oregon. Maybe it'll happen when you play a team like Michigan State, which we'll get into. But, oh, by the way, in Michigan State's 3-5, I don't think they're that terrible. It's an opponent you're going to have to take seriously if you want to win the game. So I hate to be this guy, but it just feels like they are what they are. I know PJ teams get better as the season goes on, but this was definitely a bump in the road. And Thor, when the Gophers play their next game, they're into the final month of the season.
For sure, yeah. But to me, there is stuff to play for, right? Like we're playing for a better bowl game here. The 6.5 win total, I think, was fair. I think anything exceeding that, this should be looked at as a successful season, a season where you dip down in a little bit in talent, but certainly more so in experience. We kind of knew that this was going to be kind of a reset year, hopefully in deference for next year. And if you were to finish this regular season 7-5, and that's how they're tracking now, they're going to be favored, I believe, in 2 of the last 4 games. You have a third one that's going to be real close. So you could even get to 8-4, but that's for me, it's about that. Can we grind anything about? Can we overachieve sort of what we have here? But then also hopefully praying that we're setting this up for next year, because if you get those, Coy and Lindsey are the 2 obvious ones, and Darius, his decision with the pros. It's Anthony Smith, Agent Zero. He has another decision with the NFL draft. But if you can do well to recruit those guys back to campus, and you can be successful. You're not going to compete with Ohio State and Oregon for the offensive tackles and such like that. But if you can correctly identify the second, third tier of those, and you're able to bring some of those guys in, selectively plug a couple of your holes, I think that's where things get interesting. So for me, it's sort of watching these young guys coalesce and develop in a season where they're going to make a bowl game. To me, that's successful.
Yeah, and I'll echo what you said on the 7 wins part. I'd like to beat Michigan State. I borderline would say that they should beat Michigan State. I don't love using the word embarrassing, but it would be an embarrassing loss, especially after coming off of losing 41-3 to one of your rivals. I think no matter what Wisconsin looks like in about a month's time, you should beat them. Yeah, Northwestern's going to be favored, but you can win that game. So again, win 2 or 3, if not all 3. You win 8 games this year. One thing that I would be looking for, Thor, and I know it sounds like moral victory guy, but you know what I'd love, Thor? I'd love to go to Autzen Stadium in Oregon in a few weeks and not lose 42-3 or 41-3. You probably are going to. I'll be honest about that. You probably are. But dang, Thor, it would be nice to lose a game like 35-17 and feel like, hey, we competed today. Is that too much to ask for at this point?
What this year's team might be, because the susceptibility of the offensive line to get run over, your young quarterback still getting confused with some coverage looks, which makes sense. It's not super duper experience yet, but again, because of some of those holes, you would like to see him be more competitive for sure. I mean, again, both the last Vikings game and the last Gopher game, them just being dead on arrival right away. It's sort of like, you're looking forward to the game all week and all day, and then immediately, it just like, you just know, right? Like, this game's already over. So you would like to see them more competitive, but I think the big thing here is to regroup. You obviously had the letdown spot for the Gophers in this game, and sort of a deflate spot, and Iowa, was able to, I think Iowa, they matched up really well as well, because you could nullify the Gopher defensive front. Iowa is one of the best offensive lines in the nation. You match up better here with Michigan State. The Iowa game, I don't know if you were winning that one either way. This is a game now with Michigan State. As a coaching staff, you need to have this one. So this is the one of the rally the troops. All right, let's pick ourselves back up. That if Michigan State went into Minnesota and wins that game, that's where I think you could start criticizing the coaching staff a little bit. But as long as they can bounce back and win a game that I think they match up pretty well in, we still have this thing moving the way we want it.
Okay, let's talk about Michigan State, and then I want to get into a few P.J. Fleck related questions, because since we last talked, it's rumor season, hot coach stove season. We already have 12 openings, and Thor, there's probably at least 12 more to go. Half of them probably wouldn't logically make any sense for PJ. Half of the other half is probably not going to be on the radars, but we'll talk about that when we get there. Michigan State on Saturday. They started off 3-0 like a lot of Big Ten teams do. Schedule was favorable. They did what they were supposed to. They've started conference play 0-5. Some of them have been ugly. They haven't all been ugly. They pushed their rival Michigan a little bit last weekend. What is the game plan for the Gophers on Saturday to avoid what I would call disaster? And disaster would be losing the game. Thor, this goes back to what I said about Rutgers and Purdue. Doesn't matter if you win by 1 or 21. You absolutely cannot lose this game. Let somebody else fall to Michigan State and give them their first Big Ten win in quite some time. I think Jonathan Smith is 3-9 in the Big Ten. Obviously, all of those came last year at Michigan State, or is this year 3 for him already? Is this year 3 or is this year 2?
I think it's
maybe
year
2. 3 already. Is it? Okay, well, whatever. Nonetheless,
okay, I gotta look that. It's one or the other. I gotta look that one up.
If it's no, if he's 3-9, it would be 2 years. So we don't even need to look it up, because I know
it is.
So I know I saw.
Yeah.
So how do you avoid disaster? Because this would be disastrous. And for as good as things were for PJ Fleck 2 weeks ago and people patting him on the back, this would be about as low as it's been in 9 years if you follow up Iowa coming home, losing to Michigan State, Thor. And I'll be honest, it's an afternoon game, so maybe more people will come out. In all honesty, though, you're probably looking at a bit of a sleepy ho-hum 35,000 fans at the stadium. So you're going to have to bring your own energy for this one.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, part of it, of course, is just getting the kids off the mat after you get smacked last Saturday, making sure, to your point, that the energy is there. with the team. The other thing, it's going to be work that goes on yesterday, today, tomorrow with the installation and the opponent-specific game plan. So let's get into Michigan State. Michigan State, their offense, it has been extremely inefficient, and they go 3-and-out just about as dang much as anyone in the nation. Michigan State, their offense, 3-and-out percentage, they're 126th out of 136 FBS teams. So you will get punted back to quite a bit. They're also not great between the 20s, which stands to reason. Where Michigan State's offense gets better is when they get in the red zone. They tick way up there. Their points per possession, points per scoring opportunity. Michigan State ranks surprisingly well in lieu of how poorly they do between the 20s. So trying to make sure that they lean into their efficiency, so you don't allow them to get into inside the 20, where their clever play calling and their dual threat quarterback, they can do different stuff and try to nick you till they get to the end zone. That's a big thing. Michigan State, they also don't get penalized. It's probably the best part of their team, the discipline with that. So you're not going to get free yards. The Gophers, typically they win the penalty battle against the opponent. This one, we're probably that phase of the game is probably going to be nullified. I mentioned Michigan State's dual threat quarterback, Aiden Childs. He had a whole bunch of hype coming out of high school when he ended up signing with Jonathan Smith at Oregon State. He was like this late riser, and everyone was talking about him of like, oh, is this dual threat, and he can do all these different things. And he was the recruit that everyone, slept on. And his first year, he was behind DJ Uiagalelei at Oregon State. Aiden Childs was, and then he transferred over with Jonathan Smith. Now we have gotten about a year and a half of starting tape to watch Aiden Childs. Childs, he has a live arm, and he is a really, really good athlete. As a quarterback, as an in-pocket throwing quarterback, he's got a long way to go. The physical ability absolutely is there. He doesn't read the field well. He does not have a lot of pocket presence. And if the initial read isn't there, you start to see him panic. And that's where you can take advantage of him, try to flip the field or try to, pen him back there and get him sacked or whatever. He will make mistakes. If you can do that, if you can take away the initial read, the Spartans, they be essentially trying to inoculate or work around Aiden Childs' struggles going through progressions, the accuracy going up and down, all that different stuff. They've tried to give him higher percentage throws. It's interesting looking into the deeper numbers on this. The Michigan State is in the top 45 in the country in rates of passes that go to tight ends, slot receivers, and running backs. How is that possible? Because they don't throw to their boundary receivers. They don't, certainly not down the field, very rarely. They'll take a shot every now and again, but it's the thing where the coaching staff is obviously drilled into Childs. You don't chuck that thing deep unless it's for sure one-on-one and it's your primary read. But outside of that, they're going dink and dunk. So the offensive strategy, they've had to build it around working around the quarterback's weaknesses as opposed to playing them up, right? And so even though you have this guy who has all this ability because of his issues throwing in the pocket and all that different stuff I was talking about, you just have to go further to work around that. I mentioned the inefficiencies there. Michigan State is also 114th in the country in plays that gain more than 1 yard, in plays that gain more than 0 yards. So you have a whole lot of plays that are just not doing anything, leading to some of that efficiency. And I mentioned that they don't like their quarterback. They don't trust him to sit back there and go across the progressions. The Michigan State defense, the thing that they try to do is take away explosive passes. So this is the thing you're going to have to sit down with Drake May. Drake May, he will push that ball down the field. In this game, the thing that you can do to Michigan State's defense, you can paper cut them all day long. They will not be able to stop it. So that's the Gopher passing game, the quick hitting stuff, and then trying to get your playmakers into space out there. The secondary for Michigan State is not good. You will be able to take advantage of them. You will see broken tackles, and you will see guys running in the open field if they're able to do that. The Gophers have used their receiving core this year where you have Smith. They like to do the uncork thing to him. It's like once they get the numbers advantage, this isn't the game where as much I would be chucking the ball deep downfield. So I don't think this is going to be as good of a game for Smith, but the efficiency player, Tracy, Gears, those Taylor coming out of the backfield. I think those guys are going to do a lot of damage in the passing game. I think Lindsey's going to have a lot of completions here. If the Gopher staff is seeing the same thing that I'm seeing, the overall pass defense for Michigan State is very, very bad because they're horrific at stopping the short stuff, basically. So yeah, you can nick them. The other thing, Michigan State, not a good tackling outfit. They're 97th in the country in tackle success rate. So again, Gophers, just your offense, don't shoot yourself in the foot. Make them tackle you in space, whether that's the passing game predominantly here, but also of course with the running. Gophers have to work around their offensive line like we have talked about, but there is ways that they can get that ball out quickly into space and force a bad tackling team to try to tackle them in space.
I don't want to say that Michigan State has lost to 5 teams in the Big Ten that aren't any good. 4 of these 5 teams, for whatever it's worth, are going to go to bowl games, maybe the 5th team. USC put 45 points on them. Nebraska put 38. UCLA put 38. Indiana put 38. And Michigan put 31. So logic would tell you there are points there for the taking for the Gophers offense. I'm not saying the Gophers offense is as good or as capable as some of the offenses that I named, but I think we've seen them more often than not this year be able to have success moving the ball, especially at home. My question to you, Thor, with some of that bad tackling from Michigan State, I know you have to open up the holes on the offensive line to get into that secondary or maybe the second line of defenders to get some missed tackles. But could this be a day where Darius Taylor has a day that looks more like it did against Nebraska than it did against pretty much any other opponent?
If there's a get right spot, this is probably it.
Assuming Darius Taylor is healthy, by the way, that's another thing
for sure.
Any of the backs, any of the running backs.
For the we'll say for the Gopher running game as a whole, if there is a get right spot, this would probably be it. Mention the tackling issues that Michigan State has, but also Michigan State's run defense in the aggregate, 107th success rates, terrible EPA per rush, one of the top advanced run defense stats that we have. They're 124th, Michigan State. Again, out of 136 FBS teams, the defense for Michigan State is bad. The only thing they're good at is taking away explosive passing plays. So the thing that I would advocate for the Gopher coach, maybe the Smith kid you like to throw the deep balls to, maybe not do that. Let's lean into let's just paper cut them. Paper cut them. You're moving the ball. You have offensive efficiency. You already know heading in that you'll have something that they don't. Michigan State couldn't derive offensive efficiency if you gave it to them for free. Right. So if you all day are staying on schedule, you're going to drag them out to deep waters immediately anyway. It's going to force them now that Michigan State needs to start hitting some explosive plays to get down the field to where the only time where they show up any semblance of offensive efficiency is in the red zone. But you got to get down there. And when you can force Aiden Childs, now we have to start throwing down the field. Now we have to start taking more chances. That's where the boulder starts going downhill on Michigan State. That's what they're not good at. So the big time path here for a game where the Gophers could control this from the outset, I believe.
2-parter on the head football coach, and this comes as it's a tough week for him, especially after people like myself, yourself, and many others lauded and have defended his record at the University of Minnesota, which, by the way, I still will do. And as I told some people via comments on social media, whether it even be the Gophers 101 YouTube most recent edition, people love to attack him for the losses, and there are bad losses. Look, he's a 500 coach in the Big Ten. Get that. And yes, more often than not, when he plays the better teams, he loses to them. Him and again, I would say 75% of the coaches in the Big Ten, if you're not Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon, yada, yada, yada. But I do think you always have to acknowledge there have been really good wins. I think people love to omit that fact and just go after the bad losses. I get it. Emotions run high when you get absolutely whooped by Iowa. When you're 1-8 against them in your regime, you haven't beat Michigan. You haven't really competed with Ohio State. I get all that. But Thor, I know my answer because I've said it before and you kind of have as well. What would you say to the people? And I know you've seen it. I have. There's been plenty of it. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but basically the comments are, in 9 years, you're still losing games like this and you're still going 7-5. PJ's being paid millions. He needs to go. What would you tell those people?
What I tell them is like, let's say, it's like you're a middle class family, right? And you send your, depending your wife or your husband out for groceries, right? Depending on, and you send them out with $100 with groceries. Sports fans are the ones that when you walk in with your $100 of groceries, they're like, why didn't you come back with $1,000 of groceries? And it's like, well, because I had $100. What you're looking to do is to stretch the 100. Maybe you see a deal, maybe you have coupons, maybe you can stretch it to 10%, 15%, 20% better than the dollars that you had. The context is lost on sports fans a lot. I think they just want to win every single time, and the context of the situation where the wins and losses are actually occurring a lot of times are omitted. The argument that I've made about P.J. Fleck, well, first off, it's just an objective fact that he's the best Gopher coach in the last 75 years. Folks out there with your wins and losses, try to refute that argument. Use your wins and losses and try to refute that P.J. Fleck is the best coach in the last 75 years. He can't do it. That would be one thing I would say. And the other one is simply the thing I've talked about the economic neighborhood the Gophers are in. You want to criticize the guy for being 500 in the Big Ten? Does he have the resources that are smack dab in the middle of the Big Ten? No, he doesn't. So by definition, he has overachieved. The best coach of the last 75 years of the Gophers has objectively overachieved while he's here. Are there going to be people that are upset because every year they don't go 16-0 and win the national title? Of course. Sports is where we go, the sandbox, to be irrational. We have to be rational in real life. And when we, punch out or whatever, it's, you're a homer for your team, right? Like, and you support your team no matter what. And you believe the best for them. And when they let you down or the coach lets you down, any of these one-offs, sometimes you can be a little bit knee-jerk and, that guy sucks or this guy, it becomes this world in absolutes where, again, the context is omitted from the argument. So that's what I'd say about P.J. Fleck. I think he's criminally underrated. And Ross, your talking point before that about the coaching carousel, I think that's going to be fascinating to watch. This is zooming out a little bit. We already have more coach openings in the FBS right now as we sit here on Thursday morning in late October than we had all of last year at the end. There's already more job openings. And kids, buckle up because we're not even close to where we're going. And that's even when the carousel starts. Then you're going to have way more jobs open up because you always have the poaching thing, right? You poach from a team under you, then they have to poach from under them. This is going to be the wildest coaching carousel offseason in the history of college football. And I don't think anything will come close in terms of the amount of FBS coaches that are moving. So in that environment, it's interesting that the Gophers have stability with their head coach. And I think this is a time where maybe Gopher Nation, maybe you ought to appreciate P.J. a little bit more because this is a thing, the environment we're going to enter this offseason where lots of people are going to get calls. P.J. Fleck, 1,000,000% is getting calls, multiple calls this offseason, to talk about jobs or whatever, because so many are going to be open. I hope that P.J. Fleck stays for the reasons that I just mentioned. I'm invested in the Gophers every single season making a bowl. And every now and again, every 7-8 years, you have a puncher's shot to take down some giants. That is way better than the Gophers have had in 75 years. That is a rising of the tide of Gopher football, and I hope it sticks around. But that's something for Gopher fans to watch out for this offseason, because every coach is going to, even the ones that have their contracts, and everyone is going to get caught up in the swirl of this thing, because you have a lot of schools that are going to be looking to fill their job openings. A lot of them are going to be trying to do so with sitting head coaches that have contracts.
Yeah, and for P.J. Thor, the reason why I didn't chime in was you and I are pretty much in lockstep. I agree with everything that you said. Again, that doesn't mean that I don't get frustrated. That doesn't mean that I don't take shots at the coach. That doesn't mean I'm still not sickened by losing to Bowling Green at home a handful of years and blowing a chance at the Big Ten West by losing at home to a Purdue team you should have beaten. You can still be upset and still be rational in your takes that the Gopher football program is probably in a good place.
Yeah.
Pretty good place, about as good as it can be. Do I want it to be better? Absolutely, I want it to be better. But what I want in tandem with that is to actually make a decision on P.J. Fleck at the University of Minnesota, where I get to a point where I say, yeah, you should move on from him. I'd like to get to that point when I feel like their house is in order with NIL. PJ, oh, by the way, can hire and retain assistant coaches. Because again, that's not his fault. Then the comeback, Thor, I can already hear it now. Well, he could take a pay cut. He's not taking one, nor should he have to. Nor would you at your job if they said, hey, we can go hire 4 more people if you take a 40% pay cut. You're not going to do that. And if you are going to do that, explain to me why you would, because most of you are not going to do that. A current head football coach who works 100+ hours a week, who only is being paid in the middle of the Big Ten and still losing assistants, he's not going to take a pay cut, nor should he have to. And again, that goes back to administrative buy-in that is completely out of his control. And Thor, if he goes 7-5, he's absolutely going to get calls. We know he's gotten them before. We know he's entertained offers before. And I believe this year, more so than most, he probably will entertain offers. And it wouldn't surprise me if he took one of these jobs. I do think it would have to be the right place. It's not, look, Penn State's not calling him. Florida's not calling him. LSU's probably not calling him. But because of what you said, Thor, because of all the openings, there's going to be a trickle up effect. I'm just going to make this up. It's probably not going to be Kentucky. But places like Kentucky, if that job was open, I think PJ Fleck would be appealing to him. Virginia Tech in the right scenario could maybe be appealing to him.
They're the home ones.
Yeah. UCLA, they've already went down that road. And you can see him looking at these universities saying, if you're going to give me X amount million more for my assistant pool and to essentially bring college free agents here, I will prove to you, because I know I'm a better than a 500 football coach in the Big Ten or in conference play. I've done it before at Western Michigan. Again, the game was different. I had some success at Minnesota. I can entirely see why he would make the move. I can also entirely see why he would say, no, Heather likes it here. The family likes it here. I'm largely comfortable here. But Thor, he still has to play the game, because when he plays the game of looking at other jobs, that's what gets Mark Coyle and the administration to say, oh, can we find a couple million more for assistants? Can we find some more money from this salary cap? Can we do some things differently? So I think the option every year now for the last 3-4 years, I've told you this. At the end of every Wisconsin game, I assume within a couple weeks we're going to find out that PJ Fleck's taking another job and he's leaving. It's logical. He's been here almost a decade. There aren't many college coaches, good and bad, that last a decade. But if we get to bowl season and he's still here, great. I want him to stay as long as he wants for the most part until this thing really turns sour. And I'm sorry, but 5-3 on October 30th in a season that I thought 6-7 wins would be obtainable but difficult to do. I'm not going to run him out of town just because he had another poor performance against Iowa. Do the things that other universities are doing to give your head coach what they need, then give him 2 or 3 years and judge him. My guess is the results are going to be even better if he's been 500 with adequate support, maybe slightly above adequate. I'm not saying it's terrible. It hasn't been terrible, but it can be a lot better. And that problem, Thor, goes back longer than I've been alive at the University of Minnesota, and it affects Nico Medved at basketball. Eventually, maybe we're already seeing it. It affects Bob Motzko with hockey. You need athletic buy-in from the administrators, and that has never fully happened in my lifetime. And that comes from the president on down to the board of regents and even further. Thus concludes my rant.
Yeah, we got to bring that conversation back to reality. The pay cut, what? Like, PJ Fleck would get paid more on the open market in the environment we're going to see this offseason.
Amen.
He gets
Amen.
here. So idea of a pay cut, what? If you want him out that bad, that could happen.
They say that, but people say that. They think that. And it's ludicrous.
Well, sure. People are, but the where you bring it to reality with money, here's the great thing for the folks out there: if everyone should take a pay cut, but them. In this situation here, it's a very unique one where your money, you at home who is saying PJ Fleck's not good enough and he got to take a pay cut, all this, where your money can affect change in the environment in college football that we're in. If you believe that strongly that the team should be better, great, write a check to the NIL fund. That is how you get your college football team better now. The idea that you could go out and find a better coach than PJ Fleck is frankly laughable. I don't know who the Gophers, especially in this environment we're going to see this offseason. This is bad. They better hope that they hold on to P.J. Fleck, because the Gophers will be downstream on the reload of the coaches, right? When you're now competing for the third, fourth tier guys, almost assuredly you either need to promote one of your coordinators, or you're going to have to grab someone else's coordinator, or you need to go to the lower levels and try to hit a home run, right? Pull someone up that maybe had a good record in the FCS the last couple of years, and we see what we can do. But that would not be a good scenario for Gopher football. But the scenario that would, if again, you want to be more competitive on the field, raise that NIL kitty to above average in the Big Ten. That's how you're going to make the team more competitive.
And there, I would say, if he has more money to play with and the results are the same or worse, then it becomes easier to make a decision on the coach. But right now, we're just not there.
Row the boat, Sky, go Gophers!
How about your Thorfer, Thor? Gophers in the pros. Who showed out, as the kids would say, this past weekend in the NFL?
This week we had, so this week I have to do a repeat, but he had the best week. Arianti Ursary. I had to, because Arianti Ursary over the weekend, he had the 9th best PFF grade of any NFL tackle last week, and that was in the Texans' win over the 49ers. The Texans, who for years have been wandering in the wilderness trying to fix their offensive line, it still ain't fixed, but they made strides in unexpected pass with it, both of drafting Arianti Ursary, which looks like it is wildly working out right now. And then this is the one that I still can't wrap my head around. It appears that their trade for Ed Ingram was inspired. Ed Ingram's been an above average starter at guard for the Texans as well. The Texans still need to fix the other spots on the offensive line, but Ursary had a great game this past week, and I had to shout him out for that.
Good job mixing in a little bit of Vikings talk right there, because, again, this is the unofficial pregame show to Purple Daily's Thor's Day, and that was your Thorfer. National Big Ten related, we've talked about it already. We've alluded to it. More coach firings, this time Brian Kelly at LSU. Well, first off, one of my first thoughts was, can you imagine Brian Kelly taking his fake accent game to Dinkytown? I'm just so happy to be here with my family. Putting on that fake Minnesota accent, and who knows, maybe that'll happen just a few months from now.
Yeah,
Brian Kelly, Thor. I look at this a lot like I did James Franklin. I get it. I understand it. And again, he's being paid millions of dollars to go away, so I'm not going to cry for him. Again, when your 3 losses are to 3 of the best teams in the country, I get it. They expect to compete for national championships and be one of those teams. I think maybe you need to let it breathe a little bit, but I have no hard opinions here. My gut is I would have at least waited out the season, see what the rest of the year looked like. But I also know, to your point, Thor, when you see all these other top dogs with job openings, they have a jump start on you on looking for head coaches. So again, I understand it. Perfect world, I'd wait longer.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and you get a glimpse here. We were just talking about the Gopher situation. Some of a section of the fan base maybe misunderstanding sort of the neighborhood you're in, the environment you're in, the money that is involved. Now, it's striking when you see coaches that are now being given buyouts to leave that have to be right around the number of where P.J. Fleck's career earnings with the Gophers to this point would be. I haven't gone through and added them up, but I assume that the buyouts that were given to Franklin and Kelly, right around there, if not maybe a little bit more. So you're talking about sort of a different economic environment, and obviously those schools are now going to go out and pay even more for the new coaches that come in, and they have their kiddie stuff with the NIL stuff, but it speaks to a new environment, of course, in college football, where you're now flush with cash, and the boosters are as impatient as ever. And a part of that, it's the thing with the transfer portal and seeing coaches go in and immediately turn it around. When they upended the roster through the transfer portal, Deion Sanders, Kirk Cignetti. This past offseason, you had a sitting staff that did it because there was an infusion of cash, and this Goes back to my earlier suggestion to frustrated Gopher fans. If you're so frustrated, do what Texas Tech did over the offseason and pump a ton of money into the NIL kitty. Texas Tech went out on a spending spree this offseason, and all of a sudden now they have a legitimate roster and they look like a college football playoff team. But the coaching moves that we have seen, it speaks to that, and people are getting out in front of this thing where we are going to have a record number of head coaching openings, and there are going to be guys taken from their jobs that we don't expect right now. Once the carousel opens, once we get out of the regular season, we're going to see some really wild movement there. But yeah, that's my initial thing. You would not have seen firings like that even 3-4 years ago, where those two coaches were in their contracts. I thought it was fascinating. I put this tweet out on Twitter a couple days ago, but it was at that time, 15 days before that, Charlie Weiss, the buyout he had gotten from Notre Dame way back in the day, which was just under $20 million. I think it was 18.9 off the top of my head, something like that. But it was top 3 buyout given all time to a fired coach in college football history. Now, 15 days after that, it now is not in the top 5. And it's going to keep dropping this season because we're going to get more of the big ones and the huge buyouts as well. So, yeah, we're in a different environment of college football now.
Do you care to make a wager on somebody's job? I know you said there'll be unexpected ones, which I believe there almost always is. Is there any shoe that you expect to drop next? I thought Luke Fickell, and correct me if I'm wrong, I thought he would survive through Oregon and then they would make the move. As we record, I believe he's still their head football coach, which leads me to believe he's going to make it more than likely to the Minnesota game or at least close to it. But potentially him, anybody else out there that you're thinking is close?
Well, that one's interesting because I wonder, you're Wisconsin, you're sitting in this environment, you're like, yeah, we're sick of Fickell. This thing's obviously not going to work out. And we could get ahead of the coaching carousel thing. We fire him now. And you wonder why, holding on to that thing. I wonder if Wisconsin is waiting it out till the end of the regular season to see if they get calls from another school or if Luke Fickell's representation calls them. Because Luke Fickell, if you're one of the second, third tier teams, and this is also going to speak to how desperate some of these teams are going to be that are not in that top tier, that get to essentially pick who they want because of the resources that they have. They're going to have to think more outside of the box. One idea would be, man, it just wasn't a good fit with Fickell there, but at Cincinnati, he was awesome. I bet he wants out at Wisconsin. We're pretty sure Wisconsin's administration, would like that as well. You might get a situation like you got with Louisville and Scott Satterfield a couple processes ago where basically Jeff Brom going to Louisville was able to open up a coaching vacancy to hire their alumni Jeff Brom by essentially agreeing to let Scott Satterfield go easy to Cincinnati. Satterfield was near the end. We thought he might get fired that season, but it turned out Cincinnati was interested in him, and so Louisville actually got a little bit of buyout money back from that. That's what I wonder here. The calculus with Wisconsin, if we pull the trigger now, we have to pay the huge buyout, and we have to go in, we have to shake down the boosters in order to accrue that money, and we're going to have to shake them down again to get involved with this wild coaching process, the carousel that's going to be on, all the competition there. If we wait till the end of November, I wonder if Luke will be contacted by one of these third tier, a lateral move, which for Luke Fickell would be an enormous upgrade because you get to start over at another school and the honeymoon starts anew. Whereas for Wisconsin, you'd save the buyout and maybe even you might get a little cash back from the other school. You could work something out. That's something to keep an eye on there. And it's another factor, like with all this stuff of, when you're considering some of these coaching things, because we are entering a Wild West process here. We're about to enter an environment with the coaching carousel in college football that we've never seen before. So there's going to be there's other calculus going on than just meets the eye, and I'm curious with that one. The other one, Roz, I would just say is that this is the best season to be a G5 upstart head coach.
Yes.
Man, those guys are going to get paid, all of them. Anyone that wants to leave, go up and take a rich contract, you're going to get that opportunity. So that would be another one that I would watch out for. It's harder, trying to predict the established head coach that you could pry, but we know that there's going to be a lot of movement from some of them other ones.
So one name that comes to mind very quickly, and then I want to look at some other games here really quickly. One gentleman, the team's a little underachieved this year, but a gentleman who I think is going to wind up on some of the upper echelon radars. He currently is in the group of 4, but I think Rhett Lashley is going to wind up getting on the radar for some of these big time jobs, just because college football playoff last year at SMU. They're probably done with the college football playoff talk this year, unless I'd have to look at their path to maybe getting back to the ACC title game and winning it with 3 losses this year. But that's a name that's out there. So I also think you will see some guys with their group of 4 jobs also shifting to other group of 4 jobs, which then again, Thor, it's not only the fired people's jobs that are open, it's the guys leaving for other jobs that opens up spots for the group of 5 guys. So we will see. We'll keep an eye on that.
Arkansas is the one to watch for Lashley. I think that one's going to come down to, does he go home to Arkansas? He take the bag that they're. I would bet any amount of money that Arkansas will offer Rhett Lashley. That's their top guy that they're going to offer him. And then it's just going to come down to Lashley. Like SMU, they have money. They're boosters. They got deep pockets down there. So you want to stay, at SMU, the new ACC member, or do you want to try it out in the SEC with the place that pretty good? I think that's what it's going to come down to for him.
Very quickly, we'll close with this. Vanderbilt is at Texas. Georgia and Florida State, always kind of fun to keep tabs on just because of the long-standing rivalry there. Cincinnati is at Utah in the top 25. Oklahoma in Knoxville for what is essentially a college football playoff elimination game. Anything there especially pique your interest, or anything else happening around the country that you want to talk about in closing?
Yeah, the one that I'm sort of most interested in right now where we sit is that Vanderbilt at Texas game. Vanderbilt, you have to take them so seriously now, moving to 7-1 as a college football contender by definition at this point. And obviously this is a huge game there. Vanderbilt, if you finish the regular season 10-2, you're going to get in. You're not getting in at 9-3, but a 10-2, team there will. So the Vanderbilt to get in, you got to go 3-1 down the stretch. This one at Texas. After that, you host Auburn, then you host Kentucky, then you're at Tennessee. If Vanderbilt wins in Austin this weekend, their odds of going to the playoff all of a sudden are awesome, right? Like, what are the odds that they go 1-2 down the stretch? Auburn, Kentucky, at Tennessee. Right, and you could afford to lose, for instance, that last game in Knoxville, if you were to beat Texas here. And the fascinating aspect of this thing, so you have this upstart Vanderbilt team going on the road here to a Texas team that we all thought was going to be awesome, and they haven't been horrible, not quite as good as we thought. Certainly they're beyond live. In fact, they're a 2.5-point favorite in this game as we sit here right now. But the fascinating thing to watch on the field is Arch Manning going to play in this game. Arch Manning did not play well at the beginning against Mississippi State last week. And in the fourth quarter, Texas had this wild, frenetic comeback. It was the first 17-point fourth quarter comeback in the SEC in like a decade or 15 years or something. Texas forced overtime. They end up winning in overtime. But Arch Manning at the end of the fourth quarter got hit on a scramble where his head bounced off the turf. He has been in concussion protocol. Texas, you don't want to be starting your backup quarterback in this game. Vanderbilt's defense is very, very good. Vanderbilt, they have very good defense, and they don't make any mistakes on offense. And then they just very, very slow pace, right? And so if you cannot make mistakes against Vanderbilt, they will, it's a Jerry Kill team. I know he's, whatever, but like, he's not the head coach, but like, it's just sort of the classic ethos of one of those teams. If you have your backup quarterback, you're in deep trouble already if you're Texas. So Texas badly needs Arch Manning back in this game. And then Arch Manning, if you are able to play 7 days after you suffered a verified concussion against a nasty defense here, how are you going to play, right? When your team needs it, because Texas also is on the brink. One more loss for Texas, you're done. Right, they're more on the brink than Vanderbilt is. So that game's fascinating to watch, especially considering where Vanderbilt has come from, where they are now, and then considering the Arch Manning status update right now, which we're just going to have to monitor all week, and we'll find out later this week if he can give it a go.
Tons of fun as always, Thor. I know we packed a lot into the show, but I appreciate your time. Look forward to talking more Gophers and college football with you next week.
Hell yeah, can't wait.
That is Thor Nystrom. I am Ross Brendel, and this has been Gophers 101.